Hello everyone. Today we'll be discussing about hemostasis and we'll be mainly focusing on formation of primary hemostatic plug, also known as temporary plug. What is hemostasis? Hemostasis is the process of forming clots in the wall of damaged blood vessels and preventing blood loss while maintaining blood in fluid states within the vascular system. Platelets are involved in all stages of hemostasis, from initial reaction to the final repair. Let's talk about the morphological characteristics of platelets. Platelets are non-nucleated, circular or oval shaped, which is 2 to 4 micron in diameter. The lifespan of platelets is 9 to 12 days. After that, it is degraded in the spleen. The normal count of the platelets is 1.5 lakhs to 4.5 lakh per cubic millimeter of blood. So though platelet is a small inside, it consists of many different array of molecules. There are two types of granules. One is dense granules and another is alpha granules. The electron dense granules consist of adenosine diphosphate, calcium and serotonin, while alpha specific granules, these granules contains fibrinogen, factor 5, bone volume factor, fibronectin, beta thromboglobulin, heparin antagonist, and then thrombospondin. While platelets also consist of the submembranous filaments like actin and myosin, platelet contractile factors, and also it also expresses the plasma membrane also expresses the platelet phospholipids, which is later leads to the coagulation cascade. Now this platelet membrane consists of receptor for adenosine diphosphate, bone volume factor and fibrinogen, which are very important in the process of formation of primary plug. So whenever there is a blood vessel injury, whether it can be capillary or it can be veins, and there's an exposure of the collagen, while other side, in response to the vessel injury, there is a myogenic vascular spasm and reflex vasoconstriction, which actually lead to the vasoconstriction and reduces the blood flow towards the site of injury. And with the collagen exposure, the platelet get attached to the collagen via bone volume factors, and this platelet gets activated and follows the release reaction, which releases molecules like serotonin, thromboxane A2 and ADP. This thromboxane A2 and serotonin will enhance the vasoconstriction effect that reduces the blood flow. More blood flow is reduced at the site of injury, while ADP helps in the platelet aggregations and thus forms the platelet hemostatic plug, also known as primary plug. Now platelet expresses platelet phospholipid, and along with the tissue factor it undergoes the coagulation cascade, forms the thrombin, and this thrombin is responsible for the conversion of fibrinogen to fibrin. Now this fibrin thread actually wrap up the primary hemostatic plug and thus forms the stable or definitive hemostatic plug. Let's talk about detail on platelet adherence and then aggregation. Let's suppose this is the blood vessels with the endothelial cells, and there's a collagen surrounded by the smooth muscles. So let's suppose there's a vessel wall injury. With the injury, there's a reflex vasoconstriction, means contraction of the smooth muscles, and this will reduces the blood flow at the site of injury. Now the platelet gets adhere. Let's suppose this is a platelets get adhere at the site of injury through bone Willebrand factor, which is again released by the injured endothelial cells, bone Willebrand factors. The platelet has got the receptor for binding the bone Willebrand factor, which is also known as glycoprotein 1b receptor. So glycoprotein 1b receptors, through bone Willebrand factors, it will adhere to the injured area. Now this adhesion of the platelet will lead to the activation of platelet, which actually releases three chemicals: adenosine diphosphate, thromboxane A2, and then serotonin. Now thromboxane A2 and serotonin will enhance the vasoconstriction, and this ADP is responsible for the aggregation of other platelets at the site of injury. Platelets actually express these two receptors. One is glycoprotein 1b receptor, which is mainly responsible for adhesion of the platelet through bone Willebrand factors. Another is GP, that is glycoprotein 2b or 3a receptors. Others platelet also has got the GP 2b 3a receptors. So in between these two there is a binding of fibrinogen. Actually this glycoprotein 2b and 3a receptors is not activated unless there is a release of the ADP. So this adhere platelets will actually releases the ADP, which helps with the activation of this platelet and expresses the activated form of GP, 2b and 3a receptors in this platelet as well as the other platelets, and this helps in the aggregation of the so many platelets, okay, through fibrinogen. So this all leads to the platelet aggregation. For the platelet adhesion and aggregation, so number one, there's a vessel injury, and through bone Willebrand factor it helps in the binding of the platelet at the site of injury, and this binding is mainly through the glycoprotein 1b receptors in the platelet membrane. Now this adhesion follows the activation of the platelet that releases the three molecules, namely serotonin, thromboxane A2 and adenosine diphosphate. Serotonin and thromboxane A2 enhance the vasoconstriction effect, while ADP in this diagram it Resting platelets also express the glycoprotein 2B and 3A receptors, but it is on receptive state. However, with the presence of adenosine diphosphate, the platelet becomes activated, means glycoprotein 2B and 3A receptors in ligand receptive state. So because of this, there is a platelet aggregation to fibrinogen. Now this aggregated platelet will express the phospholipids, and then factor 7A will lead to the coagulation cascade, which helps in the formation of fibrin, which later this fibrin, cross-linked fibrin, is actually attached to the primary plug, platelet plug, and forms the definitive plug. Disorder related to the primary hemostasis are, these are usually the abnormalities in the platelets, which can be either quantitative defect, for example thrombocytopenia means decrease in platelet count, or it can be qualitative disorders, like deficiency of bone valence factors in the bone valence disease. Another is deficiency of glycoprotein 1b receptors, known as Bernard-Soulier syndrome. Another qualitative defect can be on the deficiency of glycoprotein 2b 3a complex on the platelet membrane, which is the disease known as Glennsman thrombocythemia. So these are some of the qualitative disorders. Clinical features of these primary hemostatic block disorders are mucosal and skin bleeding, which includes petechia, purpura, or ecchymosis.